Hello, everyone. Welcome to Opinions New by Dr. Frank Pianchet. I'm Frank. Yeah. In this episode, I want to offer a comment on CSIS 2025 through 2030 World Forecast and Outlook. And for those of people who are not familiar with this, CSIS stands for Center for Strategic and International Studies, right? Recently, they published a research report and actually give some very interesting and insightful explanation and prediction about world situations in the next 5 to 10 years. The title of the report is Four Scenarios for Geopolitical Order in 2025 through 2030. What will great power competition look like? Obviously, we all know that our world today is at a critical moment. There is a fight, between the good and the evil, and the forces on both sides are actually preparing and gathering the strength and the start to the final battle, right? And also, of course, everyone in the world will be interested in, what our world will be like in the next few years or next decade. Right? And this report, this analysis by CSIS, is quite interesting and quite insightful. But I also feel that there might be some shortcomings. Allow me to comment on that. Okay. The Center for Strategic and International Studies is a think tank, worldwide, world famous think tank in Washington, D.C. Right? It started out as a research center from Georgetown University in 1962. Right? Its focus is on the global politics, economy, and securities policies and strategies. And they're really good at international relations, trade, science and technology, finance, and the geopolitical aspects. And from a ranking of worldwide think tanks by University of Pennsylvania in 2019, CSIS was ranked #1 in America, in the US, in all the fields. Right? In the global ranking, so it's ranked as the fourth. So it's a very prestigious institution. Right? In this report, published just now in the September of 2020, right, they have CSIS has the risk and foresight division. They analyze the geopolitical situation in the next 5 to 10 years. There are 6 researchers working together and gave the 4 very possible, they think the most possible probable scenarios. And all these, included the potential development in the CCP virus and Wuhan pandemic, and also the vaccine development. And also they focus on the interaction between US and China and its influence of the two countries. And also they consider other factors like the major alliance partners of the United States and the US enemies of the United States. This report is actually quite interesting, and in that they not only give those academic type of research and inside analysis, they also give some good, 4 videos offering some vivid analysis and the simulation. Okay? For every one of the 4 scenarios, they also provided, a deep, in-depth trend analysis, right? And also gathered opinions from experts in the field, as they said, right? But also keep in mind that this research project was funded by the Department of Defense of the United States, and there is a Defense Threat Reduction Agency. So obviously, this is very, very practical and is pointed. So it has very clear strategic and tactical objectives. We can say that this is really our guidance or the toolbox for U.S. military when they start to fight the Chinese communists. Okay? And also the four scenarios are quite all interesting, very vivid and very humorous, and I think it's very appropriate. They called all four of them as first one, skull and bones, skull and bones. Second one, stars and stripes. Okay. The third one, yin and yang, yin and yang, the Taoist principle from China. And the fourth one, hammer and sickle, hammer and sickle. Okay. And in the first one of skull and bones, they're predicting that the international effort to develop the vaccine and to fight the pandemic will fail, right? And then the next waves of pandemic will come, a lot of people will die, and this thing will continue till 2024, 4 years. And then, of course, with that, the global economy will come to a standstill, and many economies of the developing countries will collapse, and the human development index globally will drop, and the human life expectancy of all the people on Earth will drop also. In other words, people will die younger, okay? And global trade will be in decline. Okay? Many countries will take this opportunity to nationalize their economy, right? Unfortunately. And also the international travel ban will continue, and the US export ban will continue as well. But both US and China will see their credit, collapse because they failed to provide, good, effective vaccine for the pandemic. And both countries are struggling, right? In the process, the two countries will blame each other, finger pointing at each other, and not helping each other. Okay? But the more U.S. will maintain a great relationship with its allies, right? But China will lose face in the international arena. But China will strengthen its relationship with Russia, and because Russia needs Chinese support in technology. Under this first scenario, the oil price, energy price in the worldwide will drop, and then the Russia's defense budget will shrink, and then it become not so powerful. Indian economy is in bad shape, right? But in Pakistan, India's arch enemy, the nationalism will be on the rise. And then this model predicts that by 2025, there will be a conflict between India and Pakistan. Right? And Pakistan, after the conflict escalated, Pakistan will use nuclear weapons on India, and India will fight back with nuclear weapons. And China tried to intervene, and then Russia tried to intervene and successfully stopped it. Okay? But even though now the taboo of a nuclear weapon in battles, in wars, is broken. Now all the countries, basically the devil is on the loose. So all the countries, Middle Eastern countries, all try hard and successfully acquire some nuclear weapons. And also there will be clashes among countries in South America. And finally, it's interesting, the model predicts that a regional war will break out in North Africa. Okay? And then many European countries and Middle Eastern countries got involved. So we will see virtually a World War III, the largest war after World War II. So of course, the international order, it will be completely broken. I think this scenario is possible. It's quite possible, and really we cannot be too optimistic about the future of humanity. So this could happen, right? I think I like that analysis. The second analysis is better. I like the second one better. The second one is called the Stars and Stripes. Okay? That gives people in the free world some good hope. Okay? This model predicts that the U.S. This model predicts that the United States will start, rise from the pandemic, and then we'll start stable and prosper in a stable and prosperity for decades. Looks pretty good. And then by 2021, that's next year, U.S. will offer its vaccine, a successful vaccine, to other countries on Earth. Right? Because the pandemic is stopped, then the world economies of all the whole entire world will all come out, to grow again, with only one exception. That's China. China and the Chinese communists will reject the U.S. vaccine and try to develop its own vaccine, right? And also provide it to those countries, its allies, along the Belt and Road Initiative. But unfortunately, the Chinese vaccine does not work. It's not safe, and has really bad problems after it's used. Okay? Side effects, bad side effects. And then, because of the atrocities of Chinese communist regime, there will be uprising within China, and the Chinese communist government will continue to use a strong hand to suppress those internal resistance. And Chinese economy will experience the largest recession since 1970s, and the recession will continue till 2023. In this model, in 2022, when Chinese communists will be holding its the 20th Party Congress, Xi Jinping will be taken out, and a lower profile leader will be put in place. Right? And because of the weakened position, China will not be so hardlined on U.S. Right? But the U.S. economy will grow really fast, and the U.S. military will be enhanced. A new international order will be in place, and America will lead the world. And I think this scenario, on the part of the U.S., I think is quite credible. I think it's very accurate. I think that's going to be the case. But the part on China and Chinese communists could be somewhat, wrong. So I'll explain that, later. Okay. The third scenario is called Yin and Yang. This is basically a utopian style of imagination, in my opinion. Okay. In this scenario, U.S. and China reached a balance of yin and yang, like yin and yang in the Taoist tradition, right? And then the two countries will compete in a balance, and they will develop the vaccine together and share with the world, and there will be global economy, restored and developed together. But in the process, Chinese communists still pretty much, still holding its hard lines. But then the U.S. will work with its European and Asian allies and to reinforce a global order. Okay? And then there will be continue to be frictions between U.S. and China. U.S. will continue to restrict technology transfer to China, and there will be a decoupling between U.S. with regard to new technologies. At the same time, both countries will increase their defense spending, and U.S. will project its military to Asia, and there'll be new arms race between U.S. and China. Okay? And all those new weapons, like hypersonic weapons and drones, in space, in the air and on the sea, and all those weapon systems new advanced weapon systems will emerge. And also, there will be a global warming that leads to global food shortage. There will be a food shortage. But because the U.S. and China are in yin and yang in harmony, so they can find some consensus, they can maintain a world peace. Obviously, this is really, I think, a utopian style of imagination, goodwill, but I think it's probably from those people who are more like panda huggers. Excuse me. Okay. The fourth scenario is called hammer and sickle. Hammer and sickle, the symbol of communism. Right? Under this model, this scenario, China will rise. China's communism will rise with their terrorist, behavior, become a world power, and American power will decline, and American influence will also be reduced. Okay? Under this model, it's projected that China will successfully develop a new vaccine on the pandemic, but only provided it to only countries that China likes, right? China likes, and also use this vaccine as a way, as a lure to force those countries, who receive the vaccine to use the 5G system by Huawei. Very interesting. And also China will continue its advancement in science and technology and will be leading the world in robotics, artificial intelligence, quantum measurement, and quantum encryption, okay? And use that for military purposes. Okay? And also Xi Jinping, the Chinese Communist leader, had this goal of modernize the Chinese military by 2049. Right? That's 100 years from the founding of People's Republic of China, the Communist China. And that goal could be realized ahead of time in 2030. That's the prediction. And at the same time, the US vaccine will not be out until after 2022, 2 years late from now, right? So US will lose its edge. And then the Chinese communists and the Russians and the Iranian forces, they will infiltrate into US and they started a boycott by Americans to reject the vaccine. Yeah. And then because of rejection, a new round of pandemic will be really severe round of pandemic will come and destroy US economy. There'll be huge unemployment, and there will be polarization of politics, and the US military will decline. Okay? But Chinese communists, they were strengthened. It was to strengthen its deployment in Asia. And by 2025, because of US decline, this model says Japan will lose confidence in US, right? And Japanese Prime Minister then will, with the general public support, will develop his own nuclear weapon. I think Japan has this capability. And once Japan has nuclear weapons, South Korea will also acquire the nukes. Okay? Under the hammer and sickle, Communist China will be on the rise and US in decline. Okay? Obviously, this scenario is a one for where communism will be more and more control of the world, and the humanity will walk into destruction. Okay? I have to say that if the world, the people, the countries of the world today, of humanity today, we cannot, we cannot put a hold on the Chinese communists. We cannot remove the Chinese communism. Right? And this scenario could very well happen. It's a terrible scenario that could very well happen. Of course, my belief that I think with Trump, leading America today, and the Trump's tactics, strategies on holding China responsible and restricting trade technology transfer to China and hitting China with the trade and trade negotiations, tariffs. This scenario, the fourth scenario, hammer and sickle, is probably not going to be viable. I don't think it's going to happen. But as warnings and a reminder, is still very necessary. Basically, these researchers at CSIS believe that the world order today is fragmented. There's no clear guidelines for countries to follow, and also there's going to be a huge change, a transformation in geopolitical landscape. Okay? But the largest variable is the influence or the leadership of US and China and the interaction between the two countries. Okay? And also, how would China and US fare after the pandemic, after our restoration from the pandemic? Whether the country, either one of the countries will become weakened or strengthened after the pandemic. Yeah, all these will have impact on the world's future. Okay, and also this viewpoint is actually quite similar to another viewpoint that's not really accepted, widely accepted yet. That is the specter of communism, is really ruling the world today. I think that's exactly the same thing we're talking about. So also the four scenarios, none of them is built upon the prediction that the U.S.-China relations will go towards a more positive, or the two countries will cooperate. Right? In other words, the deterioration of the relationship between the two countries, U.S. and China, and the confrontation will be the basis for future world. And there's no way, no foundation for U.S. and China to go toward reconciliation. Yeah. Also, this research report indicates that if the U.S. can find these advantages, right, and then you work with the U.S. allies in Europe and Asia, Japan, and then they make U.S. allies realize that a world led by the United States is better than a world with everyone, all the allies, ally partners, working independently, by themselves, right? And also far better than a world led by the Chinese communists, right? So really, if they realize that, America then can change and shape the future or the behavior of the Chinese government and shape the future of China. Right? And also, this CSIS researchers found that there are some uncertainties between the China and Russia relationship, uncertainty between China and Russia. Right? And the relation between Russia and China may not be able to maintain. Right? And also, the Russian diplomatic policy could change, or could be dynamically changed in accordance with changes in the real strength of U.S. and China, and they could be dynamic change to best protect the interest of Russia, naturally. Okay. Overall, I believe that this analysis is quite thorough, comprehensive, and also insightful. Okay? But the one thing I feel that there's a shortcoming about this research, about their results, is that they may now realize, fully the true nature of China, the Chinese Communist government, and the communism in China. I think those may be because some of the researchers and maybe may still hold this view of those panda huggers. They're still having this illusion about Chinese communists. They may now realize the evil nature of Chinese communist government. Chinese government is against humanity, against tradition, and against beliefs of the world today. Okay, so that's why in their second analysis and prediction of the second and third scenarios, I believe is kind of like not on solid ground. Let's put it this way. Okay, and the one of the scenarios is that China will reject American vaccine and try to sell its own vaccine and provide it to its partners on Belt and Road Initiative. That's very possible. I think it's very likely to happen, almost certain to happen. And also, it's a prediction that the Chinese vaccine is not safe and also has huge side effect. That's also very likely, and it's almost certain. Right? But the analysis also says that the Chinese communist atrocities will lead to uprising in China by the people of China, uprising by the people, uprising. And also, but Chinese Communist government can still suppress down on that. I think that's probably is a result of a lack of a good understanding of situation in China. I don't believe the Chinese Communist has the power or the strength to start another crackdown like Tiananmen Square in 1989 or the persecution of Falun Gong in 1999. Right? Chinese economy is really indeed in the biggest recession since 1970s. I think China's Communist regime is very shaky and in very shaky stand. And it's not likely to survive past 2022. Yeah, I believe the regime will be gone, will be discarded, be tossed by the Chinese people, in the next couple of years. Right? Also, but the U.S. economy, when the U.S. economy is building strongly, and the U.S. military enhancing, and with America leading the world, I think in order to achieve those goals, the U.S. must, continue its fight, its strike against Chinese communists to help dissolve the Chinese communist regime. Then this U.S. New future of U.S. leading the new world will become possible. Okay? And also the yin and the yang balance. Yin and yang balance, that scenario is just the utopian, imagination, I believe. It's illusion. I think it shows that in academia, in research field, in politics, there are many people who still have this illusion about Chinese communists without realizing the true nature of Chinese communists. Right? And really, the fight between U.S. and China is really a fight of good and evil. Right? How can you find the balance of yin and yang between good and evil? Right? It's impossible. And China will not develop the vaccine with the United States. I think U.S. under Trump is holding China accountable for letting the virus spread. Right? And China will not share that with the world. Right? And Chinese communists will continue to use the vaccine as a weapon, just as they did, with using mask as a weapon. Yeah. But at this time, China will not prevail, will not be successful in doing that. Right? I think the Chinese communist regime is really in deep trouble, but still fighting for its survival, in the last end. Okay? And that's why the U.S., European allies, and Asian allies need to work together to strengthen the international order. And the U.S. should continue to decouple with China with regard to technologies to speed up the elimination of Chinese communists. And so U.S. will not need to be in a new arms race with China. Right? Also, I believe there is a strong possibility a food crisis is looming, in the world today. And that needs the United States to stand up, to be the guard of world peace. Okay? Interestingly, this forecast by CSIS is not on a time scale, like 20 years, 30 years from today. It's about next 5 to 10 years. So, and fortunately, so maybe in the near future, we'll see how this thing is going to pan out. Okay. Thank you very much for watching this episode. I'll talk to you. See you next time. Thank you. Bye-bye.